Hi, I am Luis Reyes. Welcome to Butcher Presents. Today we have a very, very special guest. We have the robotic version of Reggie Watts. It's very lifelike. Yes? Well, maybe it's a little glitchy. No, we have Reggie Watts here talking to us about working in the digital space. We're very, very excited. This is as he reminded me, our 13th episode. And first of all, definitely like us on Facebook. That really helps spread the word about this if you really like the conversations you have here. And without further ado, I'd like to get into conversation with Reggie Watts.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was a fun
And
drive.
you had to deal with a wild lizard in your kitchen?
I did. There was I came into my kitchen to leave, and then there was just this lizard looking at me. But it wasn't like usually they run away and he just sat there looking at me.
A bold lizard.
It was a very bold lizard. And then I just proceeded to chase it around until I finally caught it, and then I let it go outside.
Oh, that's good. And we have that, and we're able to get live on time, which is good.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So congratulations to Mother Nature and to the show.
Well, let's get into talking. Again, our conversation is going to be about working in the digital space because a little while ago, a few years ago, well, I mean, God, we've all been working together for like 10 years now. We've noticed that different people use the digital space in many different ways, and that's why it's such a wide subject. But also, it allows people to do things, I think, that crazy things that they never would have done if we were stuck with old traditional media. Or maybe they all made comic books and novels, which, again, we all did. So.
Sure. Yes,
But there's something about creating video content, audio content, and having the digital space to be a platform for people to discover it. So I kind of want to start with who you are and what you do. People know you mainly because of Comedy Bang Bang and The Late Late Show with James Corden. What else would you say are the things that people really know you for? Besides those two things?
I mean, I've been performing live for a very long time. So, since I was, I guess, 21. So that would be almost 3 years of performing. So, I think that's right. Yeah. So, so I've been performing a long time live. I've also played in various contexts live. So either stand-up comedy or bands. And I would say probably that.
Have you always done both comedy and music?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part I have, yeah. I enjoyed both as a kid, and in high school I joined the drama team, which was
very nice. So you were cool.
It was competitive, yeah, it was super cool. As soon as you join drama, it's pretty much over. But actually drama was cool because drama had the most attractive men and women in it. You know what I mean?
Very true.
For me, I was always a sucker for a drama woman. I think they're very dramatic. No, it was cool. It was really good. It allowed me to kind of exercise the idea of what I thought, how I could perform the best, which is improvisation. And my teacher was cool enough to let me improvise on the team. So I would make up my own sketches and things like that. Solo at first, and then the second year I was in drama was with a guy named Wally Bossy. So we did this duo thing that also started from improvisation and kind of built itself over the course of the year.
Right.
So, and I would incorporate music very, very much there. So it was always I always just used whichever tools I gravitated toward.
Okay, yeah, and I read your Wikipedia page, so I'm an expert on you.
Holy snorf cakes.
I know, it's crazy. But you then studied jazz in Seattle.
Yeah, I grew up in Montana and moved from Great Falls, Montana to Seattle, and I was there for a while, and probably when 1995 I decided to go to Cornish College of the Arts and study jazz voice. Because I thought that would be a great way to improve my ear, so I can hear better with creating melodies through complex chord structures. So I wanted to be able to have my ear be freer with that melodically. So so I went there for that, and also I just wanted to pretend like I was in Fame.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fame in Seattle.
Yeah, Fame in Seattle, which
good.
was exactly everything you would imagine.
Like dancing in raincoats or something.
There was dancing in raincoats. We marched down to the Civic Center to protest the NRA, or not NRA, NEA cuts.
Oh, NEA cuts, yeah.
We had a huge parade with like all the people, because it's a liberal, or it's not liberal, but it's a performing arts college, and so you had everybody, like the drummers, the stagecraft people, the violins and horns and dancers, and we all marched all the way down from Broadway downtown. It was amazing. So,
All right. And that's kind of where you cultivated your creative sensibilities.
well, yeah, I mean, but that was a place that I had access to all these incredible artists. So I would do as many projects as I could with all of them and play in like weirdo kind of noise bands and play strange jazz. Got to play with Bill Frisell and Wayne Horowitz and all these legendary performers, and learned from Jay Clayton. It was a great time. It was very formative. So that again kind of gave me a boost to the idea of what it is that I do.
And again, your Wikipedia page, I made a passing reference to this. I would love to talk about it a little bit more. When did you start making videos and start putting them up on YouTube, and what were those videos like?
It's funny. I've never personally posted anything to YouTube.
Nice. You get all your minions to do it.
Yeah. No, it was, well, in the beginning, I met Jake Lodwick, who was with College Humor at the time.
Yeah.
And Jake created a site called Vimeo, and so I was hanging out with him during that time that Vimeo was kind of really coming into its own, and kind of living. It was kind of like I got to live with like a miniature version of Zuckerberg.
Oh, right.
But like a way cooler dude. So it was great. So he was a videographer as well. So he would record me performing. He would come to my comedy shows in New York. This is when I was living in New York, and he started recording me at the College Humor pad, which was like some crazy like vaulted ceiling, single elevator,
right.
type of situation downtown. Just some early internet money, and all the College Humor guys lived there, and it was this really cool spot. And he had this huge bedroom, and he would set me up in his bedroom, and I just improvised, and he'd shoot me, and he'd put him up on Vimeo. So it was really Vimeo was the first place.
Oh, it's interesting. What was the reaction like then? So these were pretty much you just doing your live performance, but for a camera.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just. Yeah, that was it. He just captured me in a way. There was a very simple, subtle way. I think The Beginning is Near might have been one of the first ones that he recorded. And the reaction was great on Vimeo. The Vimeo community really loved it, and it got a lot of traction that way. And we kept making a series of videos together. Eventually, they just got put on YouTube. I think probably by someone that just grabbed the file and put it up on YouTube.
Right.
And then after that, like anything YouTube after that was just me performing, either at TEDx's or things or tech type things, or me at a comedy show and someone catches it on the phone and they just upload it. So everything that is me on YouTube is someone else posting it.
And it's interesting because it sounds like you've always kind of been at that intersection between the technology and the actual performance.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, for me, the technology only creates possibilities of what you can do as a performer. How can you project as a performer? How can you create as a performer? And so me being involved in the tech community was always kind of a no-brainer. I was always interested in technology. So I gravitated to people that were experimenting with technology a lot, whether they were musicians, hacking their own pedals, or musicians doing early looping, or what have you. I was always interested in that. And, and the technology also, it's great because people it's a good marriage because technologists need creative people. They are creative unto themselves, but they need something to kind of, activate a watcher or a listener. And so that was always something great because I was willing to. And the other thing is, unlike a comedian, like even though I was doing comedy in New York, mixed with music, most comedians don't like to be recorded because they're developing their material for an hour, or a special or whatever it is. And for me, I didn't care because I'm improvising. So so that's why there are a lot of videos on YouTube, because I don't really care. People can. I always encourage people to record the performances.
And do you find yourself, because of the technology and because suddenly there are these videos out there now, did that change how you were performing at all, or evolve it in any sort of way? And I'm thinking about eventually getting onto Comedy Bang Bang, eventually getting onto James Corden.
Yeah. Oh, what was the variable?
That being able to have that kind of response, that you could see then yourself you can see the fact that there are these videos out there now, and then respond to them and grow yourself.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's funny. For me, the videos just represent, they're just documentations of...
They're catching you in your evolution.
Yeah, and so I'll definitely look at it and I'll think, mostly I'm thinking, do I like the song?
Right.
I'm like, oh, is this a cool song or not? Oh, that's great. It's mostly like, it wouldn't necessarily be any different than recording something in the studio and playing it back.
Right.
And just listening and going, oh, that's cool, great. I think maybe I'll try this. But I've never really like changed what I did based off of the feedback. The feedback was more, are people liking it? Oh, that's great. They like it. I really like it. I'm glad that there is evidence that exists.
Right, and when Comedy Bang Bang started, did that mark a change in the way? I mean, you still were on it. You were still doing your songs. You were still doing improv, I'm assuming.
Yeah, still.
But then there were these sketches and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was no, say the question again. Actually.
Oh, sorry. When Comedy Bang Bang started, did that mark a change in the way you created work?
Right. No.
Oh, there you go.
It's funny. It's so funny because I was like hearing the question differently. I was like, wait a minute, is that true? No, not really, because it's weird. It's like even coming to the interview today, it's like, there was like a compression of time before we were starting, but for me that's very comfortable. It's like, it's not as comfortable for technical people, but for me it's very comfortable to just like show up and immediately start and to have the least amount of information possible.
Oh, good.
So
I should have shared less with you.
No. I appreciate it though. It was great, but the point is that in Comedy Bang Bang, I was just doing what I would normally be doing if I were just going down the street and just humming to myself. I just had like the equipment there, so I could elaborate a little bit more. So it was just me doing what I always do, but in a different context.
But then there were also sketches, and I wanted to cut to one of them really quickly because I think it'll give people an interesting kind of look into the kind of stuff you did. So why don't we see this clip from Comedy Bang Bang right now, and then you could respond to it. Tell us kind of what the context of this is.
What's that, boss?
Meet Duncan Crampton.
3 p.m.? I thought you said that the meeting was at 3 a.m. Hey, whoa.
Duncan just couldn't get anything right.
You missed my game, Dad.
Daddy blew it again, didn't he?
That's the 28th time this month, Duncan, and it's only February 26th.
Yeah, but you gotta admit, that's too many games.
Leaving you was the best decision I ever made.
I'm such a screw-up.
One wish will change everything.
I wish I'd never been born. What's up, Mom? Why am I inside your stomach?
Baby, you were never born.
So the reason I wanted to cut to that instead of rather another clip of you in Comedy Bang Bang where you're doing your music thing is because it is different. It's a sketch instead of. So how did you approach these differently than your normal thing?
It's so funny. Well, it's not that funny. But
It's pretty funny.
Well, that might have been. Well, there's like I'll go back to that one specifically. But I've been doing sketches since I was a kid. Like so in elementary school, I conned my elementary school principal into letting me do a play for the students. And I decided that if I made it an anti-drug play, because it was like the 80s, it was like big anti-drug time, that would ensure that I got to do it, and it did. So I did a play for that. I did in drama, would do some sketch type things, and then in Seattle I was in 2 sketch comedy groups.
All right.
So I'd always done theater sketch. So it's not. It's it's funny, like when sometimes people will be like, oh, that's your first time. It's like most of the things that you see me doing I've already done before.
Right. You've kind of done all of this stuff from the beginning.
In the beginning, but I had to kind of choose. You just get known for one thing because that's the thing that you build your momentum from. Yeah. And so then they're like, oh, now he's doing a sketch thing. But I did experimental theater, and we filmed sketches for that, and tons of stuff. And I made stuff with playwright Tommy Smith, and we had I guess a moniker, Dumb Films, and we have that's up on Vimeo, and there's a bunch of really terrible, but I love them sketches up there. So
Dumb Films. If
yeah,
you look
they're
it
just
up on
called
Vimeo.
Dumb
Dumb
Films on Vimeo. Yeah.
Okay.
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
Or be square. So that was, that's like bigger budget, like, I mean, even though it's still small budget, but it was more covered, more traditional,
Sure.
like, union, well, actually non-union, but yeah. But I will say that sketch, because most of the time I was an actor for Bang Bang. I didn't really have a lot of input for what I was doing in the sketches, other than sometimes I would vaguely say, I'd really love to be a cop, and that's it. And then they would write a sketch with me being a cop. But that particular one was really fun to do. I will say that's what stopped me from ever doing anything that had gross stuff in it.
Oh, God.
Because I was covered in this like gross, gooey crap. And I did it because I thought, this, you're tough. You can do, like I was just like, yeah, you can do this. You're an actor. This is what actors do. They have to like, get into their own. So I did it. I made it through that way. But that... Definitely from now on, I'm not going to do any gross stuff.
So you have to do,
like stuff splattered on me. I
like
can't do it.
Method is just not good.
Not into it, man. I'd rather go conceptual. You stay drier.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I want to now look at the Late Late Show, because in that it does seem like you really are bringing exactly what you do, music and improv and kind of strange, your kind of own particular brand of strange comedy to it.
Yeah.
And
Sneak it in there.
How did that, first of all, come about? I'd love to be able to hear.
Yeah, it was very strange. I'd just quit Comedy Bang Bang, and I was getting ready to go back to New York and be a free agent, and pursue a bunch of dumb projects that I wanted to do. And then I got a call from my manager saying this guy James Corden wants to meet me at some hotel in Beverly Hills because he's the new guy that's taking over the Late Late Show, and he's looking for a music guy. And I was like, what? Because I just quit this fake talk show where I'm a one-man band on a fake talk show. And then here's this guy who just got offered a real talk show who now wants a real music director.
Right. Was he a fan of Comedy Bang Bang?
He didn't know anything about me.
Oh, wow.
A friend of his showed him some videos.
Oh, okay.
On YouTube. He was looking for somebody, and they showed him some videos on YouTube, and he was like, I want this guy. Like, he liked it from that. And so we met at this hotel. Showrunner was there, Ben Winston. Really nice guys, really sweet guys. And I was, like, immediately, like, resistant, because I'm like, I just got out of something. Why would I get into something else, guys? Yeah, what's going on? And, but they were very clear as to what they wanted and what they wanted the show to be like. They wanted it to be fun. James, assured me, he was like, we know you're an improviser. You can set up the show however you want on your end, and everything he said was true. He rung a lot of bells, and then it took a month and a half of me kind of deliberating whether I wanted to do it and asking tons of people and friends, and I think Sarah Silverman was the one that kind of like pushed me over the edge, where she said, just ask for all the stuff you want, and if they give it to you, consider taking it and doing it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just asked for, the band's not going to rehearse, it's going to be improvised, a bunch of other criteria, and they agreed to all of it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was great.
And then they also let you pretty much, take over the show sometimes. I mean, it seems like you do material.
Well, it's cool. The good thing about the show is that they definitely encourage me to do extracurricular things for the show. I haven't done anything as of late, just because we've gotten into such a groove. And so I'm so used to just like coming in, having fun doing the show, and then leaving, and anything on top of that would be more time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that's just me being lazy. But I do get inspired, and when I do have something that I want to do, it's great. Ben Winston and all those guys, they're so sweet, and they'll be like, what do you want to do? And so I try to reserve that for when I'm really inspired for something specifically for the show. And then they write a lot of bits for me to be in.
That's good.
And again, they know I'm an improviser, so they don't.
They can't write it too much.
They can't write it. They just put a framework. They're just like, here's the thing, just do what you do, but here's the context, and that's it.
Let's take a look at one of these little pieces you did on the James Corden show.
What is it? What have you done?
Well, I've been working very diligently and hard on ice sculpting.
You really?
Yeah, I want to do some for. I asked the producers, and they're like, "Yeah, I can show them to you."
So you've got some here tonight?
Yeah, let's do it. You want to see it? Want to see them?
Of course, we'd like to see them. When we go?
Okay. That's some curtain opening music. Reveal the sculptures.
Reg, they look like they might have melted, no?
Yeah, I did.
Did you? I'm not sure you've thought this through.
I didn't account for the heat of the lights and also just leaving them out for hours.
I'm sorry, man.
You know what though? I can tell you what they were, and I think you'll be able to still see them. There's still like most of the structure left, so you'll see it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So this obviously you'll see this right away. This is an eagle that's disappointed in the food that it's caught.
Yeah. Now you say it, it's clear as day, isn't it, gang? You've got it. Yeah.
So when I saw, my wife and I started watching the Late Late Show when it first came on, and again I think one of the big reasons was because of you. And when I saw that sketch, it just floored me. I'd never seen anything that bizarre on network television before, you know. Yeah. And you know, it's like you could sort of see where you were going, and yet you evolved your whole bit kind of as you were going. You know, like each piece became more and more bizarre. With the last piece, we didn't see it in that sketch, but the last piece, you basically say was a sculpture of his head, and you're just desperately trying to convince everybody that it's his head.
Yep. Yes.
So what was the response like to that?
You know, I don't know. I you know, it's funny because I know that those clips are up on YouTube, but I never look at them or see them because, you know, it's like you do the show, so it's happening. You know, I'm there when it's filmed, and I have a kind of an idea of what it's like. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that people like it. I've definitely heard some people say that they're very frustrated, like when I do the takeover, like where, you know, like I start dancing around and like the music keeps going or whatever.
Sure.
I saw there was some lady that was genuinely upset. It was on Twitter. That's what it was. She was genuinely upset that I had ruined the show. Like I was like, wow, that's so weird that someone would either they're so playing into like this is my hope. My hope is that they're kind of more of a conceptual person, and they love to role play so intensely that they become the person who actually believes that really happened, and therefore they are deeply affected by it.
Oh, right.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, good.
That's probably not what it is. It's just someone who actually thinks that I did that, and that they recorded it, and that they. Like, well, we can't undo it, you know. Like I don't understand.
We have a show. We got to put it on.
Yeah,
let's do it.
We ran out of time. We can't take that again. So thanks a lot, Reggie. So let's just air it. So I've heard that. You know, I haven't really heard anything positive or anything. You know, for those types of things, I do them, and I hope that people enjoy them. You know?
Well, I guess what I found so interesting about it, and you mentioned things that are conceptual, and my mind always goes to the conceptual art. But here I was watching what was a network show, and I often compartmentalize in my head network sensibilities.
Of course.
And I compartmentalize conceptual comedy. I mean, I go see a lot. I was a theater reviewer for the LA Weekly for nearly 10 years, and so I saw a lot of stuff. And of course, I was the young one, so they always sent me to the weird stuff, which I loved.
Yes.
But I never really saw it on network television. And like I said, my wife caught you at Meltdown Comics, and when she saw you, she was kind of like, you should really check out this guy. It's like it kind of does that kind of conceptual comedy that you seem to really gravitate towards. And so again, when I saw, and of course I didn't see anything at that time, that was the first thing I think I've ever seen you do that was conceptual comedy. Yeah, I'd been watching the show and I saw you did music, and so that's when I was like, I so need to learn more about you. I need to learn about kind of what's going on. And so I'm going to take a real quick detour real quick. because you've been here before.
Yeah.
The Institute for Contemporary Art LA is opening a new space downtown. They're really interested in VR as an art medium, and they wanted to reach out to you. And when they said that, I'm like, oh my God, like my two worlds are colliding here. My connection with the art world and my connection with this world, and then you sort of walk into it, I was very blessed that you were able to come to us, and you seem to enjoy the spice. So I was like, hey.
Oh yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it's great. I had a great time there. It's cool. It's a cool vibe.
And we'll talk a little bit more about VR in a second, but I did want to kind of this is the part of the show where I'm kind of going to transition into more of conceptual comedy and how the digital medium really allows that to flourish. And you've already talked a little bit about it. You talked a little bit about how Vimeo really opened up new audiences for your stuff. So much so that Comedy Bang Bang brought you on and you did your improv thing on that. You ended up going out of the James Corden show and they let you do the strange conceptual comedy that you do. What does your world look like now? I mean, it seems like you're going into VR, you are doing video games, you're doing all these other things. What draws you to all those different media?
I'm drawn to things that I love. I love video games, and I love any kind of expressive technology. VR is something I'd always wanted to have be real in my life ever since I was a little kid. The idea of just a dreamscape was really one of the first movies that.
Sure.
That was about going into people's dreams, but it was kind of a similar thing. It was like immersive reality, being able to go, or time travel. They're all related. It's like time travel, going into people's dreams, or whatever, telepresence.
I like how you said expressive technology. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like you like a technology that allows one to express.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like that to me is intriguing because obviously as mediums. It's like I feel like there's a responsibility for artists to get ahead of the curve to help steer technology in a good way.
Okay, yeah.
In an interesting way. And so there needs to be, people who genuinely love. I mean, obviously VR is like kind of it's also a very hyped thing. Where people are like VR, now AR.
I feel like a lot, they're the people that are getting into it because they're like, oh my God, movies are going to be so cool in VR.
Yeah.
And then they're the people, like a lot of the artists that we had that night, the ICA night, who are really going, oh my God, I can immerse someone in an entirely different experience than they've ever had before.
Yeah, like how can we use the technology to actually integrate with the organic sensibilities of a human observer, as opposed to how can we recreate the medium that we're used to seeing in a two-dimensional way, in three-dimensionally? Like how do we storytell? Like there's like all these like people trying to figure out how to tell a story in VR, which I think is important, but you have to like throw all that stuff away.
Right.
It's just it's its own thing. And you need to be able to, I mean, it's like with any good technology, you have to have an access point. And so for me, I'm drawn to these types of technologies because I'm trying to see what is the thing that is most naturalistically gets someone to synchronize with it.
Right.
To forget that it's there and to just have an experience, whether that's duration, intensity,
I also feel like when they have no way of telling what the next moment is, and I think your live performance, I feel, is that too. I feel like your live performance really gets at disorienting an audience. So the audiences are leaning in and kind of waiting for that next thing to happen.
Yes.
And I just realized there is a throw that I missed that I really, really want to show.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's from your TED Talk. I know I'm bouncing back and forth a little bit, but since we got onto the it is related because we got onto the subject about why VR can be so interesting, and it's because you're sort of giving somebody an experience they've never had before, and you're immersing them in an environment they have to lean in to kind of get a sense of what it's about. So I want to do this, and I apologize, guys. I'm sorry I skipped the TED Talk, but let's see that TED Talk, and then I want to show a little bit of your VR film after we have a chance to talk about the TED Talk a little bit.
Sure.
So this is Reggie Watts at a TED Talk. Where was this?
Long Beach, the last one at Long Beach.
Okay, it was at Long Beach. So take a quick look at that.
Det sono lieto, vi sono reggatori mia scegliendo snagation. Me toro io tra mio sono tutoro io trovesce non ricondi ci maria io con aiutero voce di sera e da votare voce di idee ottomane era vasciu e travesco. Me una polomo i farà congiu e sana concelar vance? No sei. Me Des fois, on peut voir, parce que les gens ici faire des choses, on peut manger. Mais quand tu es fâché avec quelqu'un, c'est for the first time. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about this convention. It's not so much as so little as to do with what everything is. But it is within our self-interest to understand the topography of our lives unto ourselves. The future states that there is no time other than the collapsation of that sensation of the mirror of the memories in which we are living. Common knowledge, but important nonetheless.
So that was how you opened your TED Talk. You opened your TED Talk speaking, speaking a different language entirely, and then changing languages. I'm just basically repeating what you just saw. Sorry about that. But talk a little bit about that. And what, again, I mean, that's more of that conceptual art. You're including the audience in a kind of strange deception that reveals a truth, right? I mean, that's kind of what art is about.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely, 100% believe that. I mean, the thing is, like, with what I do, it's about communication. It's communicating using things that seem familiar, I guess they're just things that we've all experienced some form of. And I love the idea of being very relaxed and normalizing something that's not necessarily normal, and switching between languages and things like that. What I'm doing is I'm assuming, when I'm performing, I'm just assuming that people are understanding.
Right.
So while I'm performing, even though I'm aware of the fact that they probably don't,
right,
what I'm feeling as I'm doing it is that they do understand, and that, you understand, right? You understand, and eventually people will start to understand that I'm pretending like they understand.
Right.
and then there's this cool loop that starts to happen.
Yeah, I think the idea is when people are they can divest themselves of this illusion that they have to get it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful thing when you get to an audience where you're like, the audience is like, oh, none of it makes sense. Like, I can just let whatever's happening in front of me take me.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And I think that's where VR, especially Waves, which is your VR film that you made with, and I forgot the director's name, I'm sorry.
Ben Dickinson.
That's right, Ben Dickinson. I thought was so amazing. When we were getting to VR, I said this story actually at our VR event, but that wasn't live, so I'm going to say it now. When I saw Waves, I'd seen all this VR stuff. I mean, I must have spent, 8 hours one day just looking at everything that was free on Samsung Milk VR.
Yeah.
And I ran into Waves, and suddenly it was transformative. It was different, right? And I think it was because you weren't telling anybody they had to pay attention to a story. You weren't telling anybody that they had to understand what was happening in front of them. And I just thought it was amazing. So I want to hear you talk a little bit about Waves real quick, and then like to show the trailer for it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Waves was very, I was excited. Ben Dickinson told me, this company Weaver wants to do this video, and so we just kind of sat down and I flowed a bunch of ideas, and then Ben kind of organized them into actual shootable things. And so the idea, what I want is I wanted to have the experiencer move through different worlds. And the thing that I focus on the most, whether it's experimental theater, live theater, or in the medium VR, which is actually closely related to live theater, is our transitions. And transitions are very important. And so I wanted to create a series of transitions that led into experiences. And so I thought of, I wanted an outside feel to it. I wanted, kind of a green screen fantastical thing, and I wanted it to end with serenity and beauty in nature, and so we kind of wrote that out, created those different parts, and then Natalie Emanuel, who was surprisingly was like, sure, I'll do it. I was like, okay, that's crazy, but okay. And she was such a sweetheart. She was great, and it was a short shoot. It was and we had to problem solve a lot of hiding from camera, which now you don't have to do anymore. But back then it's like,
we're rolling, and then just there's literally
Scattered.
16 people that are hiding behind objects that sometimes you can catch if you're looking. Yeah, so we problem solved and just performed. I just performed how I normally would perform to camera, and it was very naturalistic. So it was very. It was a very simple. It didn't feel like I was doing VR.
Right. You sort of made what you do, which is
Yeah.
that improv, musicality, things like that. You just made it work for a different medium.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you just find that sweet spot of like, well, as long as my thing is, as an artist, like technology should adapt to the artist. The artist shouldn't, or even better, production should adapt to the artist. The artist shouldn't adapt to the production.
Right.
There's always going to be a little bit of give and take, obviously. But I
Not
think,
here.
Yeah, well, no, not here. No, it's like you have to stay in this box. There's no way to move. You know, fill out your papers. No, but like, yeah, because otherwise you reduce the magic. There's like, you know, obviously constraints are really great as well. But in general, if you have enough space for someone to do what they do naturalistically, that's what you want, because
Right.
you want to capture that magic. So in this situation with Waves, that's what we designed, and I think that's what we got.
That's great. Let's take a look at the trailer for Waves. We're not going to see it in VR. We're going to see the trailer for it.
Yes, the entertainment module. Would you like to try the entertainment module? Yes, all the greatest people have used it. Felf Karfner, Batcher Tapplepap,
Grinster Talbert.
Everything you believe in is
Flavor
crucial
Valver,
to your existence.
Tabor Backer
Hopefully you won't hurt too much.
Also.
Two, three, four. Waves. Waves got me feeling like 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 waves.
Lucky you. You've taken the first step towards self-enlightenment. What is reality? What is it made of? Many people have tried to answer this question by coming up with things like, oh, particles or electrons zooping around in the spacesuit that we called life. But no matter what you think or what you theorize, just know that you're wrong. Because reality is made of waves. And so are you.
And yeah, so that is Waves. A couple of things I wanted to also say when I first saw it. I talked to a lot of people about VR, and they were like going, okay, films can't be past 5 minutes because people's attention spans won't do it. It hurts their eyes. Waves was 11. You got to keep a continuity of space, or else it's going to completely disorient the viewer. This has no continuity of space whatsoever. It just drags the audience through all these places. So again, one of the things I appreciated about Waves was the fact that it sort of, from the very beginning, kind of broke all the rules that people were establishing about VR.
Yeah, I mean, you know, without us even, you know, thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, for me, I was like designing an experience I would like to experience.
Sure.
You know, and you know, I'd heard some of these ideas, you know, that you'd mentioned, but I just never, you know, after we made Waves and we went to New Frontiers at Sundance, which was fantastic, and you know, VR was really hot that year, and I saw some, you know, VR productions that cost $1 million or $2 million or something like that, and they were flat and didn't have very much emotion. There were some very inventive ones that I saw that were really promising. They were kind of experiential, like kind of more like an idea for how you could experience things in VR. And those were great, but you know, and there were a few that were just awesome. They're just simple, and you're like, oh, that's cool. That was nice. It's just like very nice, and you're like, yeah, that was great. I like that. But for me, VR is I want to break. You know, like there's the company the Void out of Salt Lake City, where they're doing that kind of mixed reality. You know, the general term.
And they're doing it in a space.
They do it in a space. Yeah. So they're mapping what you're seing in VR is mapped to real objects. So if you reach out and you see a chair in VR, and you reach out, there is a chair there in VR. That's interesting to me. I look at it as just a tool that you can add to a whole immersive experience.
Right.
And so you can start with the basic tool, which is just someone standing, turning around, or sitting in a chair and rotating around, and that's really cool. But as technology gets better and it becomes wireless and things like that, you know, I'm interested in using it in
as part of an entirety of an experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned before you like taking the familiar and sort of changing its context or changing things about the familiar so that it, again, I think before I mentioned, reveals a different kind of truth. I want to jump back to video games real quick because you mentioned a video game idea that you were working on at the ICA event that I think everybody just started cracking up when they heard the title. Could you tell us what that is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a game that I believe is going to be developed with Justin Roiland's company, which as of now is called Squanch Tendo. Could change, but
Squanch Tendo.
Yeah, Squanch Tendo.
Why not?
Named after Squanchy. But so it's called First Person Hugger. And it's the idea is, I play a fair amount of video games.
A lot of first-person shooters.
There's a lot of first-person shooters, and I just quite frankly get tired of shooting.
Right.
Just constantly shooting, and it can be fun, but it's at the end of the day, it's like there's so many shooting games. I'm like, it's kind of unimaginative. Like the graphics get better, the interface gets better, it's smoother, feels more real, or it feels more cartoony and inventive, but it's just the same thing over and over again. So I was like tired of killing things, and I thought, well, what would be really great is if, especially in VR, if you had this game called First Person Hugger, and you just focused on hugging people in a small town, and some are easier to hug and some are less easy to hug.
Some a little prickly.
Yeah, and some have, there's like a hug meter and all sorts of stuff like that, so you have to like keep a certain amount of huggergy, active and captive so that you can survive. So you just survive on hugs, and I like that idea because it's, I don't know. I think cooperative games, or if you're playing a solo game, a game should feel like it activates something more than just your lizard instincts of reaction time and like I'm stressed out all the time. Like we're past that. That's like kind of like an adolescent form of video game, and so much money is made from that. But we need other things. And then there's lots of like indie darling games that are just like, oh, they're quirky and like they have like cool soundtracks, and those are great too. But I need something that's just immediately as accessible as a first-person shooter.
Right, and it has that kind of hand-eye coordination, the speed of it, the sense of competition. There's a meter.
Yeah.
But the context is hugs.
Yeah, it's like it's hugs, and the experience is nice. It's like I want something that's like immersive. There is a goal to it, but it's immersive, and you can just kind of hang out in it, and it feels good. So that's my response to that in video games.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Because I could talk to you all day. Probably. We're running out of time a little bit, so I'd like to be able to get to some. Just talk a little bit about thank you about kind of looking at the convergence of media, because I think we've talked about live performance, we talked about VR, we talked about videos on YouTube, you've done television. I caught you, it was funny, for some reason one afternoon I had the impulse to watch Pitch Perfect and Pitch Perfect 2.
Oh,
And you show up in Pitch Perfect 2, right?
Yes, I do.
I enjoyed them. I really did.
Oh, they're fun.
So you're showing up in all these things, and you're engaging in all these media. Is there anything you could take away from it, from the convergence of media that may, what is the artist's role when media starts converging like this?
Well, I think to create a consistent voice through any platform, and that's really kind of what I'm shooting to do.
Right.
Eventually, hopefully, we'll have some form of a production company. I mean, I have kind of a production company called Some Kind of Thing, and eventually that'll get more formalized. But what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to make whatever I want to make whenever I want to make it, and release it whenever I want to release it. So having that ability to be able to, do something and make a short film that looks very filmic and beautiful, but it's my sensibility, to a video game, to an AR experience, geolocation specific performance that I just tweet out saying, hey, I'm performing live at this geolocation in all of these cities all over the country, in a park. Like, we just pick parks all over the country, and then you show up with your AR glasses, and then suddenly you see a hologram of me, but it only activates in that location.
Oh, that's great.
And so you get a crowd of people watching a hologram in a park or whatever. So taking all of those things and crossing all the borders. I even want to do a thing with the networks and see if we could switch one musician from each of the late night bands, and just and do like these. I just love the idea of crossing all just like being able to go wherever you want to go.
Right.
Kind of like how I'm playing a video game and I want to be able to just like go from one video game environment as an avatar and keep that avatar and move it into other video games.
Sure.
So that there's like this so it's not all
I think a lot of
proprietary.
people want to do that because, like, you know, back in the day too, you get these like patches you could put in games. that,
Yeah,
like,
totally.
putting you in Doom, but you're
Yeah.
Barney. Or
Yes,
something.
exactly. Yeah, totally. People want that. I mean, it's like, you know, that right now you could just get up and get into your car and just drive to Kansas if you wanted to. You know, you have that ability. There's nothing really stopping you necessarily. So I want to be able to do that with art. I want to be able to move into do you know, experimental theater piece, or I want to do a site-specific work or an installation or remixes for something, or make an instantaneous film with a bunch of people, or fly to Italy and, like, you know, film something using remote control submarines, whatever. Just whatever comes to mind. I'd like to be able to cross into any of these mediums and to mix them as well. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're doing live streaming here, and of course we're doing it like a regular talk show, which again, this is our training wheels. But I think we could get to a point where we turn this show into something a little strange and bizarre.
Well, imagine a live stream AR. You know, it's like, so you can just walk around us. You know, just like while we're having this conversation, and you're just like, oh, this is cool. You get up, kind of bring us with you into the kitchen while you're eating cereal. And
it's interesting. We in terms of live streaming, we did this piece for Airbnb that was at three different national parks over the course of a day. We had 3 different teams in 3 different national parks, and we live streamed for 4 hours the same shot from an Airbnb place, and people were like, well, that's boring. It's just one shot for 4 hours. Like, no, but it's live, and it's there. It's actually there. It's basically saying you could be there right now, you know, in a way. And I thought that was such an interesting idea that, yes, if I saw that 5 days later, then yes, it's 4 hours of a national park. But when I'm seeing it live, suddenly there's a connection to it that I wouldn't normally have, and I would watch something that I would never watch if it wasn't live. And I'm wondering if that has any sort of interesting artistic connection, or what you can do with it.
Well, I mean, like, you know, time-based, you know, like the context of time has a lot to do with things. You know, like sometimes I'll do these small performances that I call Audio Abramovich, where I just have people. I announce that I'm going to be performing it and in a specific city, and then people respond to it on Twitter. The first 30 people to respond respond to an email. My assistant gets all the names and then creates a time list for people to show up. And then I picked some weird location, and I'm just sitting there, and there's an extra pair of headphones across on a table and a chair across from me, and I'm sitting at a table. And they come in one by one and have a 4-minute performance, and then they leave.
Oh, right.
And so that's like location-based, experiential. When I did it at the Public Theater for Under the Radar Festival, they waited in a vestibule, kind of like a little antechamber, like after the performance. And they just sat there, and they were given sunglasses, so because it's super dark, it's super dark and just a dim light, so they have to kind of navigate their way through a dark space to that chair, sit down, have the experience. They leave. There's an antechamber with like kind of bright lights, but they're given sunglasses so that when they go out, they can adjust, because I just want people to make that nice transition. And while they're in there, a tape is being dubbed, a cassette tape of that song that I just did for them.
Oh, right.
And then they take that cassette and they take it home, and they might not have a cassette player, but now they have to find a way to listen.
That's
to
good,
cassette.
and it's a unique thing that you just created for them.
Yeah, it's like slow art, you know, in a way. It's so I mean, messing with time, messing with technologies that phase time. You know, I love the idea. Like I used to do binaural recordings with mini disc recorder, like when my friends and I would go camping in Washington, and I would record the conversation that we were having at a picnic table for like 4 minutes, and then I would put headphones on somebody and play the conversation that had just been recorded while we're still at the picnic table and people were still talking. And the offset of the conversation that you just experienced by just a couple minutes was absolutely surreal.
Yeah. I can imagine that being very interesting in VR too, having a scene take place.
Yeah.
And then as things move on, you see the same scene take place and the same scene take place. That would be a really interesting thing to do.
Yeah, you just got, it's what I like to call temporal phasing.
Right.
And when something's close enough, it creates a phasing of like what's actually happening that's very similar to what just happened.
And what makes it even more profound, I guess, because you could do that in a movie, but
Yeah.
you're separated from it. In this
Yeah.
case, you're immersed in both settings,
Yeah.
VR and the
Yeah, you're
the
actually
aural.
there. You're there in the place that you've just offset a little bit,
Right.
but at the same time being aware of what's happening in real time at the same time. So
Fantastic. I think we'll close at that. I think I
Okay.
took so much of your time. I want to respect your time and your day. I want to respect the time of our crew. Thank you so much, Reggie Watts. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. You can actually like us on Facebook. Please do if you really like what was going on. You could also watch us we're usually on Thursday mornings. And like I said, like us on Facebook. I don't know what else to say. I guess I'm just going to close the show. Guys, thank you so much for watching again. I'd like to thank our crew who put together a fantastic show here.
thank you all 20.
There we go. And thank you for my dog, who you haven't seen, but it's been walking
the
around
cat
here.
dog, yeah.
The cat dog that's been walking around, Beckett. So again, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back watching Butcherbird Presents and continuing with these conversations about artists working in the digital space. So thank you very much.
Matane.